Alright, hello YouTube once more. This time I am doing chapters 6 and 7, I believe, of the reading. Yeah, it's a Sunday right now. It's kind of late, I guess. I don't know. In any case, I believe it would be time to get on with the reading. Celerity Bell was past the point of frustration. The council had been deadlocked for 2 weeks over this issue. I swear I could strangle that idiot Blue Blood. What's he done this time, mistress? Celerity's cult servant and personal attaché, Weatherly, adjusted his lady tiara. The two were in Celerity's personal chambers in the Castle of the Sun, the room she stayed in whenever a council session called her away from Whitewall City for extended periods of time. The room was upholstered in the colors of the Whitetail Duchy, white with a streak of purple and pink. The Whitetail coat of arms, a quadruplet of perfectly cut gemstones, hung over the mantelpiece. A little home away from home. Unfortunately, her neighbor down the hall was the insufferable Duke of Norhart. All he thinks about is pushing his political agenda. The Griffins threaten our border every day, and he wants to pull troops out of Selpaloth. The fortress is under-garrisoned as it is. Blue Blood wants us to sit on our hooves and hope they go away. That idiot is going to be the death of us all. Murmured Weatherly supportively. He began fixing the hem of Celerity's ceremonial gown, trying to straighten out a stubborn wrinkle. And Celestia isn't helping. She'll let Blue Blood run the council into the ground rather than support Whitetail. Weatherly looked up uncomfortably. The princess wants what is best for the kingdom, milady. What's best for Whitetail is best for the kingdom, Celerity snarled. We practically are the kingdom. Over a quarter of Equestria lies inside my province, and the blasted griffins are barking at my doorstep. If we don't pull an army together fast, they're going to swarm north through Southland and up to the river before we know what's hit us. Whitetail had the largest army in Equestria, milady, said Weatherly, reassuring. Even without aid from Celestia and the northern provinces, we'll be able to fight off any griffin attack. Weatherly, Whitetail has a scant 4,000 fighting ponies. The griffin horde numbers tens of thousands. We'll be overwhelmed unless Celestia and Blue Blood quit dithering and give me what I'm asking for. I need to strengthen my borders. Perhaps Cloudsdale would be willing to help? Yes, likely. Lord Weatherforge already supports me in the council against Blue Blood, and we can count on the aid of Breton, Revermeet, and Westerman if it comes down to fighting. She sighed. Let us hope it does not. Helmfast is securely in Blue Blood's camp, and those two have been scratching each other's backs for decades. Norland and Greenway will follow Helmfast's lead like they always do. More crucial is East Hill. The iron mines will be needed for the war effort. Weatherly snorted. Good luck convincing him to go against the will of the princess. Yes, sneered Celerity. He is a loyal fool. He is a loyal fool, I'll give him that. What of Everfree? Weatherly combed Celerity's hair with a finely carved ivory brush, carefully preserving her delicate curls. Lord Everfree rules a ghost province. Ever since the fall... The room seemed to chill, and both ponies paused. Ever since the princess banished her sister, Everfree has lost more and more power every day. The city of the moon lies abandoned. What few ponies remain in the forest will be of no use to us in the coming war. No, Everfree cannot help us. A majority of the provinces stand beside us, milady. Celestia will surely see reason. I'm not so sure, dear Weatherly, Celerity released an anxious breath. If this issue isn't resolved soon, I'll have no choice but to take matters into my own hooves. I refuse to let my people fall to those Mongols from the south. Well, milady, we'll just have to hope that Celestia sees reason. Weatherly stepped aside, his work done. Celerity admired herself in the mirror, the trappings of nobility sitting elegantly around her. The gown was the armor of the political battlefield, and Celerity was an unmatched lady of war in that arena. I suppose we'll see. Your Highness, I must protest. Duchess Belle is trying to panic this council into making a rash decision without considering the consequences of... We don't have time to sit around, Blue Blood. The Griffins are closer to invading us than they have since the Great War. If we don't act now, then everything could be lost. I agree with Duchess Belle. The Griffins are the more pressing threat than your eroding power base, Duke Blue Blood. Lord Weatherforge, how dare you? My interests are, as they have always been, in the greater good of my province and Equestria as a whole. Duke Blueblood is correct. We can't make a rash decision that could lead us to war. Ah, Lord Helmfast, still licking Blueblood's horseshoes, I see. And you're still serving as Belle's lapdog, Rivermeat, or have you actually had a thought of your own for once? The debate quickly devolved into a shouting match, angry nobles pointing hooves and screaming insults at each other. In her throne, the princess remained silent and withdrawn. Celestia felt a cold, warm worm of fear squirm in her stomach. This circus can't go on much longer, and when it ends, I fear that Equestria could end with it. Alright, so that was the first chapter. Pretty short, fortunately. And now, chapter 7. Oh, by the way, every time they mention the Great War, I've now been thinking about World War I, since that was one of the nicknames that they had. I don't know, I just had to have some kind of intermission, I suppose. Anyway, chapter 7. Rye gasped for breath. Okay, hold on. Okay, now we're starting. Rye gasped for breath. Inger was setting a punishing pace, galloping at full speed along the road from Canterlot. The two had long since left the city walls behind them, disappearing into the foothills of the Joturs. The sun had vanished behind the mountains, and the dim pink sky warned that night was fast approaching. Finally, just as Rye felt his heart was about to leap out of his chest and strangle him, Inger slowed his gait to a trot and yelled, "Let's stop for the night." Grateful, Rye collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. Inger rolled his eyes and muttered his favorite swear word. "Civilians," he said disgustedly. Despite himself, he had to admit that they had made good time. The Cottontail Wood was already behind them, lost in the hills. They were likely less than 10 miles from the crossroads, where the path would meet up with the Great Road that would lead them straight north into Sleepnord. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out an apple, munching on it while he looked around them for a place to set up camp for the night. A tall hill caught his eye. "Come on, Pegacorn, we'll sleep at the bottom. It should be far enough away from the road to avoid any unwanted company." Rye dragged himself upright and followed Inger. They didn't bother to set up a tent. The air was chill, but dry, and the skies were clear as far as the eye could see. Unless the Pegasi and Cloudsdale had whipped up a surprise storm for some reason, they wouldn't wake up soaking wet. Rye was snoring before he hit the ground. Inger resigned himself to keep watch for a few hours. It was unlikely that they would find any trouble this close to the capital, but 8 years in the fire rings had taught him that caution was always the wisest path. "Go away, let me sleep." Rye shoved his hoof Rye shoved his hoof in front of his face to push away whoever was nudging him. "Get up already, it's 6 in the morning, time to move on." Rye blinked awake and remembered where he was. Sighing mournfully as the thought of a set of perfectly cooked pancakes waiting somewhere back in Canterlot, he pulled himself together and put on his traveling cloak and saddlebags. Still yawning, he and Inger began the next leg of their journey. "So, how far are we going today?" "Hopefully we'll reach the crossroads in a few hours. Once we hit the Great Road, it's a straight shot up through Norland and the Antlerwood into Midrethel. From there we'll follow the road into Sleepnord." Some of these names. "Sounds simple enough," said Rye. Are we going to eat breakfast?" "I already ate," said Inger dryly. "Have an apple." He tossed one from his saddlebag to the Pegacorn. Rye caught it in his mouth, taking a bite. That's good. Where's it from?" "Westerman. Got them on sale from the market day before last." "Ah, the sweet apple acres. That explains it." They were quiet for a while as Rye digested his apple. To his relief, the pace today was much easier. Inger seemed to feel that they were back on schedule. They cantered along, the morning dew glistening around them. "So, Inger," said Rye, "how long have you served under Princess Celestia?" "In the Fire Wings?" "No, in person. I gathered you were her assistant or something." "Not exactly," said Inger. He looked thoughtful. "You may note that the Fire Wings serve a dual function as Celestia's guard and personal strike force." Rye fought back a giggle. "I know a lot more about the Fire Wings than you think, Inger." "Yes?" "Lately, we've been mostly serving in our role as guards. I doubt Celestia really needs us, to be honest. The last assassination attempt on the princess was over 40 years ago." Really? Rai was intrigued despite himself. I've never heard about that. You wouldn't have, said Inger. A group of insane unicorns tried to overthrow the princess and bring back Nightmare Moon. It was an idiotic plan, anyway. They had some notion that Celestia was the only thing preventing Nightmare's return, and that killing her would bring back the Dark Queen. Is that true? What, the princess holding back Nightmare Moon? I doubt it. She's never really talked about it, though. She doesn't discuss her sister much. You seem very close to the princess. Just so. Celestia doesn't want guards. She wants friends. She doesn't need our protection, that's for sure. That group of cultists, they tried to attack her during the Summer Sun celebration and she completely wiped them out with her magic. Alone. It was pretty spectacular, I hear, but her guards are around her more than any pony else. No one ever gets close enough to her to really know the pony instead of the princess. Rai sucked his lip. It sounds terribly lonely. Inger nodded sadly. It is. She never talks about Luna, but if you're near her often enough, you can tell it's staring her up inside. Luna? She mentioned the name earlier. I've never heard it before. The princess's sister. Rai's mouth formed a little O of realization. I never knew that was her name. Most don't anymore. It's been 300 years since she fell, and ever since she's been shrouded in mystery and myth. Almost no pony remembers a little night blue alicorn who raised the moon. Rai twitched self-consciously at the mention of alicorns. No, it wasn't an insult. Don't be so touchy, boy. And how about you? Inger couldn't be more than 12. He wasn't that old. Well, said Inger, I never knew her personally, but I've seen the paintings around the castle. Great tapestries depicting the two sisters ruling in harmony. They're heartbreakingly beautiful. They're like windows into the past. Rai raised an eyebrow. I didn't expect poetry from you, Inger. Inger smiled, an expression that seemed alien on his face. Every pony has hidden depths. You just have to dig deep enough. He turned thoughtful again. I wonder what yours are, Pegacorn. Rai wished he'd stopped calling him that, but he seemed to genuinely think that Rai might not be totally useless. Perhaps they were warming up to each other after all. Come on, we have to pick up the pace if we're going to get to the crossroads by lunch. Can you gallop any faster than you did yesterday? Or maybe not. Still, it was a start. The sun had risen above their heads high into the sky by the time they reached the crossroads. The great road stretched out to the north and west, promising adventure and discovery in all directions. It was a mark of the road's importance that it was paved with flat, smooth stones, unlike the majority of Equestria's simple dirt trails. The road cut all the way from the northern pass of Midrathel to the far south, over the Grumar River and past the fortress of Salpaloth, cutting deep into the kingdom of Griffa. It was the main artery of equestrian trade, providing a fast, straight path to every major city and province east of Lake Alazor. Rai had seen the road once before, when he was still a little foal. His parents had taken him on a trip to the market in Saladin, Saladin on the lake shore. He used to sit on his mother's back while she flew up about the waves, watching the water reach out to the horizon. The road was visible even from the air, extending far beyond sight. His mother had told him stories about what lay down it, of far-off cities and wonders she'd seen while traveling with the Firewings. He smiled at the memory. I think it's time to stop for lunch. Inger stopped and stretched his neck. They walked off the side of the road, looking for something to snack on. Rai found a patch of dull red roses hidden behind a bush, and called Inger over. They each happily picked one to chew. So Inger, said Rai, in between mouthfuls, what stories do you have from your time in the princess's service? He was curious about his companion. If they were going to be doing this job, they needed to trust each other. He had to get the Pegasus to break the disapproving silence between them. Inger munched thoughtfully on a rose. I've seen a lot of action fighting monsters to keep the roads clear. We patrol the road from Norheron to Everfree periodically to make sure the trolls don't endanger travelers. His eyes glinted. Ah, yes, of course. Trottingham. Rai's ears perked up. Trottingham? My father's from there originally. Really? He might have been there for this then. Has he ever told you about the big battle that happened there 7 years ago? No, that was before I was born. I'm not sure if he still lived there. Actually, come to think of it, his father had never said much about Shottingham before running his first bakery there. Rye's curiosity was piqued. So what happened? Inger sat back, his eyes glazing over in memory. It had been a quiet year. My first in the Fire Wings, in fact. The roads were clear and monster attacks in the east had been at a record lows for months. Celestia sent us out to do our annual patrol of all the provinces. Marshal Blaise, God rest his soul, decided that we should cover more ground if we split up the units into several groups. Most of the wings went south towards Westerman to clean up the edge of the Everfree, but I was assigned to scout the lake's eastern side. We flew from Norheron all the way south to Tringham over a week, checking every goblin hole and wolf den. All seemed peaceful. We? Yes, myself and two others. Bergaren, our newest recruit at the time, and Guard Captain Windstreak Firemane. Rye choked back his surprise. Windstreak Firemane? Inger grinned. You've heard of her? That's not her name anymore. She's married now. I can't remember her new one. But to me, she'll always just be the captain. He sighed wistfully. The captain is the finest soldier I've ever seen, and it's thanks to her I'm still alive. He grabbed another rose, speaking in between bites. Well, we didn't run into any trouble for nearly 7 days. We arrived in Tringham on the last day of summer. It had been a hot season that year. There was a massive cloud shortage and cloud sail thanks to an accident in the foundry. We flew into the town around dusk, sweating our wings off. The townsfolk offered us rooming for the night, which we accepted. A good thing, too, because we wouldn't be doing much sleeping for the next few days. When we woke up the next morning, the captain ordered me to do a quick flight over the foothills to the east of Tringham. I did my sweep and didn't see anything too suspicious, but something odd caught my eye in the mountains. There was a great plume of black smoke rising up from the mountainside, so I flew up to investigate. Forest fires are a real threat up there, you know. Entire towns have burned to the ground due to a rogue blaze. I landed in the pine forest at the base of the cliffs, and sneaked up as close to the campfire as I could, for it was a campfire discovered, and got a good look at what was going on. The trolls had a new chieftain, it turned out. Normally, they rove around in small bands, harassing any pony unfortunate enough to run into them. But this new leader, Big Tooth was the name, had done the impossible and gotten them organized. I had stumbled into a massive camp of nearly 40 trolls, armed to the teeth and ready for war. Great ugly things, trolls, about 3 times the height of a pony with huge clawed hands and skin as hard as a rock. They were dancing around fires and singing war songs, chanting and drumming and waving their crude clubs around. I knew I had to get back to Trottingham to warn the captain and the townsfolk, but I made a mistake. I stayed at the camp late into the evening, as long as I dared, to gather information on the trolls' numbers and strength. I slipped up and got caught. One of the trolls noticed the fire reflecting off my armor in the dark. They jumped me from behind and tied me up. They trussed me like a turkey and dragged me into the middle of the camp. Big Tooth said they'd be eating good that night and ordered a pot prepared. They filled it with water and placed it over the fire, intending to boil me alive and then devour me. I struggled as hard as I could, but trolls are excellent at tying knots. They like to keep their prey alive as long as possible, you see. What happened then? Rye was quite entranced by this point, hanging on Inger's every word. Well, the minutes passed like hours. They stuck a pole between my legs and hung me over the pot like a roasted boar. Didn't even bother to take off my armor. I gave up all hope of warning the captain and the others, hating myself for not getting away while I could. All I could do was hope that I'd at least make one of them choke on the way down. Just then I heard a rumble of thunder. The trolls were confused. There hadn't been any rain for weeks, thanks to the cloud shortage. But somehow, there it was, a great black cloud hovering over the campsite. Inside, white flashes appeared. I wasn't sure what was happening, but my heart leapt. A great lightning bolt streaked out of the sky and hit a troll right in the heart. The others scattered in panic. A golden blue blur raced down from the cloud and landed next to me. It was Captain Windstreak. After I'd failed to report back from my patrol, she and Bergeron had flown down to look for me. They'd seen the smoke and investigated, just like I had. When they saw I'd been caught, Windstreak came up with a plan. Together they flew up and down the mountain all day, gathering mist to create the cloud. By the time they had enough to create a storm cloud, Winstreak had kicked up a lightning storm to cover our escape. She cut me loose while Bergeron kept directing lightning down at the camp. The three of us flew back off to Tringham as fast as we could. I knew it wasn't over. The troll that had been hit with lightning was Big Tooth's favorite lieutenant, and the one who'd caught me in the first place. The troll chieftain wasn't going to let that go unpunished. They knew we had flown in the direction of Tringham. The three of us needed to prepare the town for the inevitable attack. The captain ordered Bergeron to take the news to Cloudsdale across the lake. He argued, of course, but we needed the rest of the fire wings if we were going to stand a chance. He took off for the west as fast as his wings could carry him. It was down to the captain and I to defend the town. We spent the day overseeing the construction of barricades and other preparations. The town was practically indefensible. It had no walls and lay surrounded by hills on three sides. But we didn't have the time to evacuate the villagers. There were too many young and elderly to move quickly enough. We had no choice but to stand and fight. We laid out oil in the grass and dug shallow pits to fill with wooden spears. We drilled the villagers on basic spear handling, but it wasn't going to be nearly enough to fend off the trolls. There were a few unicorns in the village, but none of them knew any battle magic. It looked bad. The captain had plans, however. We worked through the night, preparing the town as best we could. Neither the captain or I got any sleep. The attack came at dawn the next day. The trolls appeared on the hills above the town, completely surrounding us from three sides. Nearly 40 of the beasts, all screaming and hollering for blood. The Tringham ponies were terrified, but the captain gave us all courage. "Stand at your post," she ordered. "Stand firm, and no foe will breach this city." Big Tooth himself led the charge. The trolls all ran down the hills en masse, ready to smash us all into oblivion. But the captain was prepared. The town's unicorns may not have been battle mages, but they could work a simple fire spell. They lit the oil in the fields ablaze, sending up a wall of flame right in the path of the trolls. Trolls hate fire. They use it to cook and keep warm, but wild and untamed fire causes them to panic. Their lines faltered and crashed into each other. Several of the trolls were pushed by their fellows down the hill, rolling through the fire. The screaming was horrible. Daunted by the flames, the trolls pulled back. We'd bought a brief reprieve. The magical fire burned more slowly than a natural flame, but would only last a day at the most. The night passed slowly. Winstreak and I remained awake, keeping an eye on the dying fires. By dawn of the next day, they had faltered to a bare flicker. The trolls returned with the morning sun. They moved more slowly this time, attacking with measured caution. The force descended from the hills, emboldened by the death of the fires. They crashed into the spike pits, some of them falling into the sharp poles, and others were trampled in the rush. Despite their losses, the trolls overwhelmed the defenders. Several ponies were crushed by their clubs, and we slowly found ourselves pushed back into the town. The captain and I flew to and fro around the battle, doing our best to help the beleaguered defenders. We fought as best as we could, smashing our hooves into the trolls' heads to try and break their necks. But trolls are tough beasts. The untrained villagers were no match for the blood-hungry creatures, and soon we were forced to retreat deeper into the village. Captain Winstreak ordered us into the last defensive position we had. The town bakery was the only building in the village that was made out of stone, and that made it a perfect place for to make our last stand. The remaining ponies fled inside of the building, and Winstreak and I remained outside to buy as much time as we could. We fought for hours, killing maybe 24 of them, but in the end there were just too many. We too were forced inside the bakery. We barred the doors and piled as much furniture against them as we could to reinforce the entrance. The situation was grim. We and the remaining townsponies were locked inside, surrounded by trolls. They beat on the door, trying to force it open. Fowls huddled close to their mothers, crying quietly. The door was well built, and it took the trolls many hours to make a dent in its sturdy frame. The banging of clubs was incessant. The day passed into the night. The baker, a unicorn, opened his stocks to us all before the end, trying to calm the children with cupcakes and treats. The gesture quieted the foals, at least, and I could tell the captain was grateful. They talked for a long time together while the trolls tried to breach the doors. That was the third night we spent without sleep. We were too frightened to feel tired as the trolls continued to bang on the bakery door, rattling the hinges. The door was beginning to show signs of strain. The splinters of wood flew off in every impact. The end was near. The captain ordered the remaining townsponies back into the pantry. Together with those still armed with spears, she and I would hold a final stand as long as we could. The door shuddered and bent, the bar cracking and the hinges knocking loose. The doors broke in half, collapsing into a cloud of dust and wood shards. The trolls stormed into the bakery, ready to kill us all. But then we heard shouting from outside in a familiar voice. "For Equestria!" came the cry, and I recognized the sound of Bergerand's hoarse yell. After 2 days of hard flying, he had reached Cloudsdale and returned with the rest of the Firewings and a troop of the Weatherforged Storm ponies, nearly 100 strong. The battle was brutal and swift, and the trolls were crushed under their hooves. The town threw a huge celebration, and the Count and I were hailed as heroes. Inger's eyes were misted over with fond memories. We managed to save nearly the entire town. A few brave ponies lost their lives defending it, but Tringham was safe once more, and the troll presence in the east was broken for good. They haven't appeared in force ever since that day. Rye was sitting with his jaw slightly open, completely absorbed in the story. Wow, my mother never told me about any of this. That's incredible. Your mother? Rye caught himself too late. Yeah, she's in the military. She's in love with the Firewings. She tells me all about them. All technically true. I see. Though Bergerand may have saved us all, Captain Winstrake is the true hero of Trottingham. Without her, we'd all be dead. She sounds amazing. Ryan wasn't sure why, but he didn't want Inger to know about his parentage. Or maybe he did know why. I'm sick of people comparing me to my parents, and I'm sick of losing that contest. No, he'd rather have Inger judge him on his own merits. It could be an interesting experiment. Inger picked another rose for the road and stood up. Well, we've wasted enough time telling stories. It's time we go back on the move. Come on, Pegacorn. He turned and began trotting back to the road. Rye followed, still lost in thought. So his parents had met in the middle of a war zone, for he had no doubt that the baker from Inger's story was his father, Apricot. Why'd they never tell me about this? Inger said that several townsponies had died in the fighting. They must have been friends of his father. The memories must be painful. Still, Rye smiled to himself. The guard captain and the baker. An unlikely pairing if ever there was one. Mom, Dad, I hope you're not too worried about me. Alright, well, yeah, that's the last bit. So, yeah, hope all of you enjoy it again. And also, it appeared that I have another fan, I guess. I don't know. In any case, so to Jonathan's Productions and AJP Warrior, yeah, a little shout out, why not? Alright, see ya.